Rain slicked the asphalt until the alley looked like a black mirror, reflecting broken neon and the yellow blink of a dying streetlight. The night was quiet in the way cities get quiet just before something goes wrong, too still, too empty, like the world itself was holding its breath. Footsteps echoed. Fast. Uneven. Running. Lee Tae-hyun knew that sound. He'd learned it young, learned to recognize the difference between men walking with purpose and men hunting. Tonight, it was hunting. He turned just as the first shadow detached itself from the darkness. Then another. Then another. 5 men stepped into the weak cone of light, spreading out without a word. Professional. Not drunk thugs. Not desperate amateurs. Their movements were sharp, economical, rehearsed. Pipes gleamed wet in their hands. One held a knife low, blade catching the light with each step. Too late, Tae-hyun thought. The first blow came from behind. A pipe slammed into his ribs, knocking the air from his lungs in a violent rush. Pain exploded white-hot across his side as he staggered forward, boots skidding on rain-slick pavement. Another strike caught his shoulder. Then his back. They didn't waste time. They never did. He went down hard, knees hitting the ground, palms scraping against concrete. The taste of blood flooded his mouth. Somewhere, distantly, he heard fabric tear. Heard his own breath rasping, wet and wrong. A kick connected with his jaw, snapping his head sideways. Stars burst behind his eyes. This is it, he realized with strange clarity. Not in a boardroom. Not in a car explosion. Not in some dramatic betrayal. An alley. At night. In the rain. One of the men crouched, gripping his hair, yanking his head back. The knife came up, hovering just below his throat. Should have stayed in your lane, the man muttered, accent thick, breath sour with adrenaline. Tae-hyun tried to speak. Tried to breathe. His body wasn't listening anymore. The blade started down. And then, not from the men, something moved, from the far end of the alley. A figure stepped into the light, shoes splashing softly through shallow puddles. She wore a dark jacket, sheep fabric soaked through, and a diner apron still tied around her waist, one corner fluttering like a white flag in the rain. She stopped. For half a second, nobody moved. The attackers glanced back, irritation flashing across their faces. Wrong place, wrong time, they thought. Another witness. The man with the knife sneered. Walk away, he snapped. This isn't your business. The woman didn't answer. Her eyes flicked over the scene in one fast sweep, the positions, the spacing, the weapons, the way their weight was distributed. The bleeding man on the ground. The knife. The pipe. The angles. Her breath slowed. Muscle memory woke up. The first attacker never saw her move. One moment, she was standing still. The next, she was inside his space. Her fist came up fast and tight, driving straight into his throat. Not a wild punch. Not a desperate swing. A precise strike, delivered with terrifying efficiency. Cartilage collapsed under her knuckles. The man made a wet, choking sound as his airway caved in, eyes bulging as he dropped to his knees, hands clawing uselessly at his neck. The knife clattered to the ground. What the? The second man lunged, swinging his pipe toward her head. She slipped inside the arc like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Her forearm smashed into his wrist, twisting sharply. Bone cracked. The pipe fell. She stepped through, grabbed his elbow, and wrenched. The scream cut short as his body followed the torque, shoulder dislocating with a sickening pop. He went down hard, cradling his arm, howling. The alley erupted. The remaining three rushed her together, which was the smartest thing they could have done. It didn't help. She moved like water, her body flowing from one strike to the next, never stopping, never hesitating. A kick shattered a knee sideways. A palm strike crushed the rain-dark ground. An elbow caught a temple, snapping a head back too far, too fast. 15 seconds. That's all it took. When the sounds finally stopped, the alley was filled with groans and the hiss of rain hitting warm flesh. 5 men lay scattered across the pavement, twitching, broken, unconscious. The woman stood in the center of it all, chest heaving, breath coming fast and sharp. Her knuckles were split, blood mixing with rain as it dripped from her hands. She stared down at them like she couldn't quite believe they were there. Behind her, Lee Tae-hyun pushed himself upright on shaking arms. He looked at her. Really looked. The apron. The sensible shoes. The cheap jacket. The way she stood, balanced, ready, even now. Shock widened his eyes. But beneath it, something else flickered. Recognition. Not of her face. Of her violence. Of the kind of skill you don't learn in gyms or self-defense classes. The kind that lives in your bones. The kind that only comes from surviving places where hesitation gets you killed. Jesus Christ, she whispered. The words sounded small in the alley, swallowed by rain. Her hands started to shake. Adrenaline drained away, leaving horror in its wake. Horror at what she'd done. At how easily she'd done it. At how fast it had come back. 3 years. 3 years she'd buried this version of herself. 3 years of pouring coffee, of smiling at strangers, of pretending she was just another woman trying to make rent. And in 15 seconds, she'd torn it all open. Tae-hyun coughed, blood splattering the ground. He tried to sit up, pain ripping through his ribs. His gaze never left her. You, his voice was raw. Who are you? She took a step back. Then another. Nobody, she said quickly. Too quickly. Panic climbed her throat, sharp and choking. I didn't see anything. You didn't see anything. We never met. He reached out, fingers brushing air. Wait. Her shoes slapped against wet concrete as she bolted past him, apron still tied, hair plastered to her face. She didn't look back. Couldn't. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, growing louder by the second. Someone shouted in Korean behind her. She didn't stop. Because if he learned who she really was, what she'd been, everything she'd built would collapse like a house of cards. What she didn't know, as she disappeared into the night, was that Lee Tae-hyun had already memorized her face. And men like him never forgot a debt. Morning came like nothing had happened. That was the cruelest part. Sunlight spilled through the diner's front windows in thin, pale bands, catching dust motes in the air and turning the chrome edges of the counter into dull silver. The coffee machine hissed and sputtered the way it always did. Plates clinked. Someone laughed softly in a corner booth. Normal. Sienna Cross stood in the employee bathroom, staring at her reflection under flickering fluorescent lights, and tried to breathe like a normal person. She didn't recognize the woman looking back at her. Her hair was pulled into a low, practical bun. Her face was calm, almost blank, but her eyes were wrong, too alert, too sharp, tracking every sound, every shadow. There was a faint purple bruise blooming along her knuckles, already half hidden beneath a layer of concealer she'd blended with careful, practiced precision. She flexed her fingers slowly. Pain flared. Good, she thought distantly. Pain means it was real. She rolled down the sleeves of her uniform and buttoned the cuffs tight, tugging the fabric just enough to cover the angry red scrape along her wrist. Another bruise darkened her ribs beneath the thin cotton shirt. She'd wrapped it before bed, tight and neat, the way she'd been trained. No wasted movement. No noise. Last night replayed in fragments she couldn't shut off. The sound of cartilage collapsing. The weight of a body dropping. The look in his eyes. Reached for the sink. She swallowed and ran hard. Cold water over her hands until the shaking eased. Get it together, she murmured to herself. The mirror didn't argue. Out on the floor, the diner was waking up into its usual rhythm. Late morning regulars lingered over refills. A delivery guy leaned against the counter, scrolling through his phone. The radio hummed low behind the grill, some forgettable song about love and regret. Sienna stepped out, grabbed a coffee pot, and slid into motion like she'd done 1,000 times before. Morning, she said to no one in particular, voice light, friendly. Normal. She moved down the counter, refilling cups, smiling when someone glanced up, nodding when someone didn't. Her eyes never stopped moving. She cataloged exits without meaning to. The front door. The side door near the kitchen. The narrow hallway that led to the back. 3 ways out. Her shoulders stayed loose, posture casual, but every nerve hummed beneath her skin. A chair scraped. She flinched before she could stop herself. You okay, honey? The voice was warm, familiar. Mel. Sienna turned and forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Mel stood behind the counter, wiping her hands on a dish towel. 60 years old, give or take, with soft gray curls pulled back and reading glasses perched on her head like they'd been forgotten there. She'd owned the diner longer than Sienna had been alive. Longer than most of the neighborhood, probably. I'm fine, Sienna said. Just tired. Mel studied her for a second longer than necessary. She always did. Not suspicious, concerned. The kind that made Sienna uncomfortable in a way knives never had. You sure? Mel asked gently. You've been jumpy since Monday. Since the night 5 men tried to kill someone in an alley and she stopped them. Didn't sleep well, Sienna said. She lifted the coffee pot slightly, an unconscious shield. Bad dreams. Mel's expression softened. Happens to the best of us. If only you knew, back to the Sienna register, thought. Already moving on, and Sienna exhaled slowly. One crisis avoided. For now. She worked the shift on autopilot. Order. Pour. Smile. Move. Burgers sizzled on the grill. Plates slid across the counter. A couple argued quietly in a booth. Someone complained about the toast being cold. Someone else tipped too much. Normal. Too normal. Every time the door chimed, Sienna's heart jumped into her throat. She told herself it was ridiculous. That the alley was a fluke. Wrong place, wrong time. That whoever that man was, he had bigger problems than a waitress who happened to walk by. She told herself she was invisible. Still, she watched the door. By the time the lunch rush thinned, the ache in her ribs had settled into a deep, constant throb. She leaned against the counter when no one was looking, fingers digging into the laminate to steady herself. Her body felt heavy, like it was moving through water. Muscle memory doesn't care what you want, she thought bitterly. It just waits. During her break, she sat in the back booth with a lukewarm cup of coffee and stared at the steam curling upward. She didn't drink it. She just watched it fade into the air, thinning until it was gone. 3 years. 3 years she'd done everything right. Kept her head down. Changed her name. Paid in cash. Avoided attention. Avoided connections. She'd survived worse than an alley. But something about last night felt different. It wasn't just the violence. Violence was familiar. It was the look in his eyes. Not fear. Not gratitude. Recognition. The bell over the door chimed again. Sienna's head snapped up before she could stop it. Two men walked in, construction workers by the look of them. Dirty boots. Loud voices. No threat. She let her breath out slowly and looked away, embarrassed by her own reaction. Get a grip. The afternoon dragged. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching long across the floor. Mel sent one of the other servers home early, then glanced at Sienna. You okay to stay on for the night shift? She asked. Lucy called in sick. Sienna hesitated. The night shift meant fewer people. Fewer eyes. More space between tables. It meant walking home in the dark when the streets emptied out. It also meant rent. Yeah, she said after a beat. I can do it. Mel smiled. Knew I could count on you. If only that were true. By the time night settled in, the diner felt different. Quieter. The light seemed harsher against the darkness outside, turning the windows into mirrors. Sienna moved slower now, conserving energy, listening to every sound. A fork dropped somewhere behind her. She startled, then laughed it off when someone apologized. Normal people don't react like this, she reminded herself. She wiped down the counter, the smell of cleaner sharp in her nose. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass apron, tired eyes, a waitress at the end of a long shift. She could be that person. She just had to keep pretending. The door stayed closed for a while. Long enough that her shoulders began to relax despite herself. Long enough that the knot in her stomach loosened, just a little. Maybe this was it. Maybe nothing came of it. Maybe. The bell rang. Clear. Sharp. Too loud. Sienna froze. The sound cut through the diner like a blade. Every muscle in her body went tight, her heart slamming hard against her ribs. She didn't turn right away. She listened. Footsteps. Measured. Unhurried. Not the shuffle of a tired regular. Not the distracted pace of someone checking their phone. These steps were deliberate, each one placed with intent. Mel looked up from the register, smile already forming. Evenin', she called out. Sienna swallowed. Slowly, she turned. The door swung closed behind him with a soft click, shutting out the night. The man stood just inside the threshold, framed by glass and darkness. He wore a dark coat, tailored and expensive, rain beating on the shoulders. His hair was neat, his posture relaxed simply by standing in it. He looked out of place in a way Sienna couldn't explain. Then his eyes found her. The room seemed to tilt. Time stretched, thin and fragile, as recognition passed between them. No words. No gestures. Just a quiet, devastating certainty. He knew. Sienna felt it settle in her chest like a weight. The calm she'd been clinging to shattered all at once, splintering into sharp, panicked pieces. Her hand tightened on the rag she was holding, knuckles whitening beneath the fabric. Mel cleared her throat. Seat yourself anywhere you like. The man didn't look away from Sienna as he moved. He crossed the diner with smooth, unhurried steps and slid onto a stool directly across from her at the counter. Up close, he looked nothing like the bleeding figure from the alley. His face was clean. Controlled. A faint bruise darkened his jaw, just visible beneath the diner lights. A small cut traced his eyebrow, healing. Evidence. Sienna's pulse roared in her ears. He rested his hands on the counter, fingers long and steady, and spoke in a calm, even voice. "Coffee," he said. "Black." The word hung in the air between them. Sienna stared at him for half a second too long before her training, newer, safer training, kicked in. "Coming right up," she said. Her voice didn't shake. But inside, everything was already falling apart. The coffee machine hissed as it poured, loud in the sudden quiet. Sienna focused on the sound like it was a lifeline. The steady stream. The familiar motion of her hand. The weight of the mug as she placed it on the counter. Normal. 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 She slid the cup toward him without meeting his eyes. "Careful," she said automatically. "It's hot." He smiled. Not wide. Not friendly. Just enough to show he'd noticed everything. "Thank you," he replied, his English precise, accent soft but unmistakable. "Korean. Seoul, maybe Busan. Educated. Polished. Dangerous." He wrapped his fingers around the mug but leaned back slightly, surveying the diner with casual interest, as if he were just another late-night customer killing time. Sienna felt his attention on her anyway. Heavy. Unblinking. Mel hovered near the register, pretending not to watch them while watching them very closely. Sienna could feel the question in her eyes. "Who is this man? Why does he look at you like that?" Sienna picked up a cloth and wiped the counter, scrubbing the same invisible spot over and over. Her heart hammered against her ribs, each beat echoing too loud in her ears. "Don't react. Don't give him anything." He took a slow sip of his coffee, then nodded once, approving. "Good," he said. "Strong." She didn't respond. The diner door opened again, the bell chiming softly, and a couple wandered in, laughing, shaking rain from their jackets. The noise filled the space, breaking the tension just enough to make it worse. The man watched them take a booth. Watched Sienna watch them. Then he spoke again, quietly. "You work late," he said. "Yes," she replied, still not looking at him. "Night shift." "Every night?" "Most." He hummed thoughtfully, as if filing the information away. As if he didn't already know. Outside, rain streaked down the windows, blurring the streetlights into smeared halos. Sienna's reflection stared back at her in the glass, pale, rigid, trapped behind the counter. "You walk home?" he asked. Her hand stilled. "That's none of your business," she said, sharper than she meant to. Mel glanced over. The man didn't look offended. If anything, he seemed amused. "You're right," he said smoothly. "Forgive me. I forget my manners sometimes." He reached into the inside pocket of his coat. Sienna's body reacted before her mind did. Her weight shifted. Her shoulders squared. Her right foot slid back half an inch, bracing. She hated herself for it. The man noticed. His smile faded, not into anger, but into something colder. More focused. He pulled out his phone and placed it face down. "I wanted to thank you," he said. Her stomach dropped. "For last night." The words were quiet, almost gentle. The world seemed to narrow around them, the rest of the diner fading into background noise. The clatter of dishes. The murmur of voices. The rain. "I don't know what you're talking about," Sienna said. He tilted his head slightly, studying her face. Her eyes. Her breathing. "You're very good at that," he said. "Lying." She finally looked at him then. Up close, his eyes were dark and steady, unreadable. There was no rage in them. No threat. That was what made it worse. I was attacked, he continued calmly. By 5 men. They thought they could kill me in an alley and disappear. He paused, letting the words sink in. They were wrong. Sienna's fingers curled into fists beneath the counter. I don't know why you're telling me this, she said. He turned his phone over. The screen lit up. She didn't need to see it to know. Security camera, he said. From a shop across the street. The phone slid closer to her, stopping just short of her hands. On the screen, grainy and gray, the alley stretched out in harsh angles. Shadows moved. Figures rushed in. Then. Horror. A blur at first. Then unmistakable. The way she moved. Fast. Efficient. Brutal. A kick that dropped a man twice her size. A twist of the wrist that sent a knife clattering to the ground. An elbow to the throat. A knee. A body collapsing. No hesitation. No fear. The clip ended just before her face came into view. Sienna stared at the frozen frame, her chest tight. That footage never made it to the police, the man said lightly. I made sure of that. She looked up slowly. Why? She asked. Because, he said, I was curious. He leaned forward now, closing the distance between them. His voice dropped, meant only for her. A waitress doesn't fight like that. Her pulse thundered. And because, he continued, you used a Busan-style wrist lock on the second man. Her breath caught despite herself. No one outside my organization knows that technique. Silence fell between them, thick and suffocating. Mel called out from the register, oblivious. Everything all right over there? Yes, the man answered smoothly, without looking away from Sienna. Perfect. Sienna forced herself to breathe. This is a mistake, she said quietly. You should leave. He smiled again, slow and deliberate. There are no mistakes, he replied. Only revelations. He straightened, gathering his phone, slipping it back into his coat as if the conversation were casual, harmless. Then he met her gaze fully. I know it was you. The words landed like a gunshot. Sienna felt something inside her give way, a tight, carefully constructed wall cracking down the middle. The man stood. I would like to talk, he said. Somewhere private. He glanced toward the back hallway, then back at her. Unless, he added softly, you'd prefer I ask you questions here. Her options vanished one by one, like doors slamming shut. The diner felt too small. Too exposed. Mel watched them now, concern etched deep into her face. Sienna swallowed, her mind racing, calculating distances, exits, consequences. The man waited. Patient. Certain. The bell over the door chimed faintly as the rain intensified outside, the sound echoing like a countdown. Sienna nodded once. Give me a minute, she said. He inclined his head, victory already settled into his posture. I'll be right here. The diner closed at 2 a.m. The last customer left with a lazy wave, the bell over the door chiming one final time before Mel flipped the sign to closed and locked it. The sudden quiet felt heavier than the noise ever had. Sienna wiped down the counter in silence, every sense stretched tight. The man waited, unbothered, scrolling through his phone like time meant nothing to him. Mel glanced between them. You two all right? She asked, yes, forcing cheer into her voice. Quickly. The man looked up and smiled at Mel, warm and polite. Disarming. She's just helping me with something work-related. Mel hesitated, then nodded. Don't stay too late, she said to Sienna. You look exhausted. I will, Sienna replied. She watched Mel disappear into the back, listened to the soft click of the office door closing, the rustle of a purse, the scrape of shoes. A few minutes later, the back exit opened and shut. They were alone. The man stood and gestured toward the side door. After you. The alley beside the diner was narrow and dim, lit by a single flickering security light. Rainwater pooled along the cracked pavement, reflecting warped versions of reality back at them. The city breathed quietly beyond the buildings, distant sirens, the hum of traffic, life continuing as if nothing had changed. Sienna stepped outside. The night air hit her like a shock, cold and damp, sharp in her lungs. She crossed her arms instinctively, hiding her hands, her wrists. The man closed the door behind them, the lock clicking into place. For a moment, neither of them spoke. You shouldn't have followed me, Sienna said finally. This ends now. He regarded her calmly. No, he said. It doesn't. She turned on him, the restraint she'd been holding onto unraveling. I saved your life. That's it. I don't want anything from you. I don't want to know anything about you. I want you to forget I exist. She took a step back. I'll leave. Tonight. You'll never see me again. She meant it. He studied her face, the tension in her jaw, the way her weight shifted as if she were already planning an escape. You could try, he said. The words weren't mocking. They were factual. That alley wasn't random, he continued. Those men didn't choose me by chance. Sienna stayed silent. They belonged to the Seoul faction, he said. A rival organization. Smaller. Desperate. Reckless. Her pulse quickened. They have been trying to take my territory for 6 months, he went on. Last night was their boldest attempt. She frowned despite herself. If they wanted you dead, why not finish it? Why leave survivors? They didn't, he said. You did. The words cut cleanly. They survived, he continued, unperturbed. Barely. 3 are in critical condition. 2 will never use their right hands again. Sienna felt the familiar, sick twist in her stomach. They remember you, he said. Your height. Your speed. The way you moved. She shook her head. They didn't see my face. They don't need to, he replied. They know someone interfered. Someone highly trained. Someone who doesn't belong. Rain dripped steadily from the fire escape above them, each drop a ticking sound in the silence. They are looking for you, he said simply. That's not my problem, Sienna snapped. I don't know anything about your war. You do now. She turned away, anger flaring hot and sharp. I didn't ask for this. No, he agreed. But you stepped into it. She paced a few steps down the alley, then back, her breathing uneven. I can disappear, she said. I've done it before. New city. New job. New name. She stopped in front of him, eyes blazing. This isn't the first mess I've walked away from. For the first time, something like genuine interest crossed his face. Is that so? Yes, she said. So whatever you think you know, forget it. I'm gone. She turned toward the street. Your name isn't Sienna Cross, he said. She froze. The rain seemed to pause midair. Slowly, she looked back at him. He slipped his phone from his pocket again, thumb tapping the screen. You were born under a different name. One you haven't used in years. Her mouth went dry. You arrived in this city 3 years ago, he continued. Paid your rent in cash. No social media. No family contacts. No paper trail beyond the bare minimum. Each word landed with surgical precision. But not careful. You're careful enough, he said. Her heart pounded so hard she thought he might hear it. I don't know who you think I am, she said, forcing the words out. I know exactly who you are, he replied calmly. Or at least, who you were trained to be. The alley felt suddenly smaller, the walls closing in. You can run, he said. But the Seoul faction will find you before you make it 2 cities away. He stepped closer now, close enough that she could smell the faint scent of clean soap and rain on his coat. They don't ask questions, he said softly. They take their time. Her hands curled into fists, nails biting into her palms. You think changing your name will save you? He asked. They already know you exist. That's enough. She swallowed hard. You are already being hunted, he said. The truth settled over her like a suffocating blanket. For the first time since the alley, fear, not adrenaline, not instinct, took hold. What do you want? She asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked down the alley, listening to the distant city, the steady rain. I can protect you, he said finally. Her laugh came out hollow. From you? From them, he corrected. And from what comes next? She shook her head. I'm not getting involved in your life. Or your organization. You already are. I won't work for you, she said. I didn't say anything about work, he replied. She looked at him sharply. There is a cost, he continued. There is always a cost. The rain grew heavier, drumming against metal and concrete, filling the silence between them. What cost? She asked. He met her gaze, his expression unreadable. That, he said, we can discuss. The words hung there, unresolved, dangerous. Sienna stared at him, the weight of the night pressing down on her, the future narrowing into a single, unavoidable path. Protection. Or running blind into the dark. The alley light flickered once, then steadied. And Sienna realized, with a cold, version of the story where she walked away untouched, the rain softened to a steady whisper, like the city itself was leaning in to listen. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Sienna leaned back against the cold brick wall, arms crossed tight across her chest, not from the cold, but from the effort of holding herself together. The alley light cast sharp angles across her face, pulling shadows beneath her eyes she couldn't hide anymore. You don't understand, she said finally. Her voice wasn't sharp now. It was tired. I understand more than you think, he replied. She shook her head slowly. No. You understand power. Territory. Control. She laughed under her breath. You don't understand what it's like to wake up every day wishing you were someone else. That got his attention. He didn't interrupt. She stared at the wet pavement between them, watching rainwater snake toward the drain. Her reflection fractured in it, broken into pieces that didn't quite fit together. I wasn't always a waitress, she said. The words felt heavy as they left her mouth. I know, he said quietly. She closed her eyes for a brief second, then opened them again, bracing herself. I was recruited young, she continued. Too young to understand what I was agreeing to. They called it opportunity. Education. Service. Her jaw tightened. They taught us how to disappear, she said. How to move without sound. How to break a body efficiently. How to make decisions fast and live with them. Her hands trembled. She pressed them flat against the wall until the shaking eased. I was good at it, she admitted. That's the worst part. The rain pattered on metal somewhere above them, rhythmic and relentless. We operated in places that don't exist on maps, she said. Places where rules don't apply. Where the mission mattered more than the people in the way. Her voice faltered, just slightly. Until it didn't. He watched her carefully now, nodding like to a confession they already understood too well. There was a mission, she said. Extraction. Clean and quiet. That's what they told us. She laughed again, bitter. It wasn't. Her eyes lifted to his for the first time since she'd started talking. They changed the parameters mid-operation, she said. Pulled support. Gave us bad intel. Her breath hitched. We walked into an ambush. The alley seemed to close in around them. I got out, she said. Others didn't. Her throat worked as she swallowed. People died because I survived, she whispered. Because I made choices that saved me and not them. Silence stretched. I couldn't stay, she said. Couldn't go back. Couldn't keep pretending it was worth it. She gestured vaguely at herself. So I ran. Changed my name. Took the first job that didn't ask questions. She looked around the alley, the diner door behind them, the narrow slice of sky above. I wanted normal, she said. Just this. Long shifts. Bad coffee. A life where the worst thing I had to worry about was rent. Her voice hardened. I didn't want to be that person anymore. The man exhaled slowly. When my father died, he said, I was studying architecture. She blinked, surprised. I wanted to build things, he continued. Homes. Bridges. Places people felt safe. He let out a quiet, humorless breath. Then men came to my door and told me my blood made me responsible. He looked out toward the street, eyes distant. I didn't choose this life either, he said. I inherited it. Sienna studied him, seeing him differently now. Not just the calm authority. The weight beneath it. I learned quickly, he said. If you hesitate, people die. If you try to be kind, they exploit it. He met her gaze again. So you become what they need you to be, he said. And you tell yourself you had no choice. Something shifted between them then, not trust, not comfort, but recognition. You saw yourself in me, she said without hesitation. In the alley, he continued. The way you moved. The way you assessed threats before you struck. His mouth curved slightly. That isn't something you forget. Sienna looked away. I don't want to fight anymore, she said. I don't want to be useful. He nodded once. Neither did I. The rain slowed, droplets sliding lazily from the fire escape, the city holding its breath. There are two paths in front of you, he said. She didn't ask him to explain. She already knew. You can run, he said. Again. Change your name. Leave tonight. He paused. They will still look for you. Her chest tightened. Or, he continued, you can stay. Let me protect you. Let me end this threat before it reaches you. She turned back to him, eyes searching. And the cost, she asked. His expression darkened, just a fraction. You don't get to be invisible anymore, he said. And you don't get to pretend the past didn't shape you. She laughed softly, sadly. That's not protection, she said. That's war. Yes, he agreed. It is. The alley light flickered again, briefly plunging them into shadow before snapping back on. Two paths. Run alone, hunted, always looking over her shoulder. Or stand exposed, involved, dangerous. Sienna closed her eyes. And for the first time in years, she felt the weight of a choice she couldn't escape. She didn't say yes right away. That would have been too easy. Too clean. Sienna stood by the narrow window of her apartment that night, staring out at the city as if it might give her an answer. Neon lights smeared across the wet streets below. Cars hissed past like restless thoughts. Every shadow felt heavier now that she knew how many eyes could be hiding inside them. Run again, she thought. She'd done it before. She was good at it. But for the first time, the idea didn't feel like freedom. It felt like exhaustion. The knock came just after midnight. 2 sharp raps. Controlled. Unhurried. Didn't reach for a weapon either. Jump. She already knew who it was. When she opened the door, he stood there alone. No guards. No intimidation. Just a dark coat, rein still clinging to the shoulders, his expression unreadable. I won't come in unless you ask, he said. She studied him for a long second, then stepped aside. The apartment was small. Sparse. Furniture chosen for utility, not comfort. A life designed to be abandoned at a moment's notice. He noticed everything. You don't plan to stay anywhere long, he said quietly. No, she replied. I plan to survive. He nodded, as if that answered something for him. They stood there in the middle of the room, the hum of the city filling the silence between them. I'll help, she said at last. Not a promise. Not surrender. Just truth. But this isn't loyalty, she added. And it's not devotion. He met her gaze. It doesn't need to be. It's temporary, she said. Until the threat is gone. Of course, he replied smoothly. They both knew that was a lie they were choosing to believe. The first time she proved herself, it wasn't in a fight. It was in a room full of men who underestimated her. They gathered around a long table in a warehouse office that smelled of oil and old paper. His people. Veterans. Enforcers. Men who had bled for him. And now they were staring at a waitress. Sienna felt it immediately, the skepticism, the resentment, the quiet calculation of how quickly she would break. She let them have it. She's wrong, one of them said openly, tapping a map with a thick finger. This route is secure. No, Sienna replied calmly. It's predictable. A few snorts of laughter followed. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't posture. She just explained. Where the blind spots were. Where surveillance overlapped too neatly. Where an attacker would wait, patient, invisible. She spoke like someone who had been on both sides of the ambush. By the time she finished, the room had gone quiet. He watched her the entire time. Arms folded, saying nothing. Run it her way, he said finally. No hesitation. No debate. That was the moment the room shifted. The attack came 2 nights later. Not loud. Not dramatic. Exactly the kind of strike she'd warned them about. They caught it before it happened. 2 vehicles intercepted. 3 armed men neutralized without gunfire. No casualties. Clean. Afterward, in the quiet that followed, Sienna stood in the alley behind the warehouse, hands braced on her knees, breathing hard, not from fear, but from something dangerously close to relief. For the first time since the alley weeks ago, she hadn't been reacting. She'd been in control. "You were right," he said behind her. She straightened slowly, wiping rain from her face. "I usually am," she said. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. They stood there together, the city humming around them, the adrenaline slowly draining away. "You saved lives tonight," he said. She swallowed. "That wasn't the goal." "But it was the result," he replied. Something warm and unfamiliar settled in her chest. Purpose. The quiet moments were the most dangerous. Late nights in secure rooms, poring over layouts and schedules. Shared meals eaten too quickly. Conversations that drifted away from logistics and into things neither of them talked about with anyone else. He learned how she took her coffee. Black. Always. She learned he hated silence, but only when he was alone. Sometimes they would sit without speaking at all, just existing in the same space, the weight of their choices suspended between them. Trust grew slowly. Carefully. Like something that could shatter if handled wrong. And beneath it, something else stirred. Unspoken. Unnamed. They didn't touch. That made it worse. The mid-story victory lulled everyone. For a brief, dangerous moment, the city felt quieter. Safer. Sienna slept through the night for the first time in months. She woke up thinking maybe this could work. Maybe she could wasn't just running. Survival, but the beginning of something resembling a life. That was when the message came. Not to her. To him. A single image. Sent from an unknown number. One of his safe houses. On fire. Pinned beneath it, a simple line of text. "We see her." The safety shattered instantly. Sienna read the message over his shoulder, her blood turning to ice. The enemy wasn't retreating. They were escalating. And now, whatever this alliance had become, hope, trust, purpose. It was something the enemy could destroy. Something worth losing. And that made it far more dangerous than anything she'd faced before. The fire was already out by the time they arrived. Smoke still curled from the broken windows, drifting upward into the night like a signal meant for anyone watching. The smell of burned plastic and damp concrete clung to the air, sharp and accusing. Sienna stepped over the caution tape without thinking. Her boots crunched softly against debris as she moved through the wreckage, eyes scanning automatically. Entry points. Angles. Patterns. This wasn't random. It was deliberate. A message delivered with precision. "They didn't want casualties," she said quietly. He stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets, expression carved from stone. "No," he agreed. "They wanted fear." She stopped in the center of the room and exhaled slowly. "They wanted me," she corrected. He didn't deny it. This was the end of the beginning. The moment where the illusion of containment dissolved completely. The original attack, the alley, the diner, the warnings, it had all been a test. A probing strike. Now the real war was stepping out of the shadows. Sienna straightened. "I'm done disappearing," she said. He turned to her. She met his gaze without flinching. "They used to hunt me," she continued. "Every time I ran, it taught them something. How I moved. How I hid." She shook her head once. "I'm tired of giving people power over my fear." Silence stretched between them. "This won't end cleanly," he said. "Once you step fully into this, there's no going back." "I know," she replied. Her voice was steady now. Certain. "I'm not asking for safety," she said. "I'm choosing control." He studied her the way he had that first night, measuring, weighing, recognizing the moment a person becomes something else. Then he nodded. Then we stop reacting, he said.